That's what I'm thinking too, is tank. But I don't like. Is Conqueror really the best? It's like it's Sunfire, Thornmail, and they have. There's like a few things going on here. So Warmog's Demonic Embrace, which is like the tanky burn item, Sunfire, these, and then they're doing Conqueror with Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. But Ravenous Hunter, as far as I can remember, doesn't exist anymore. Get 70 per champion takedown. So you're getting. See, this is something that I forgot about too, but I was testing this out when I was doing supports last time as well, I believe. Um, because with the precision one, basically I can do uh you get 20 gold and you get 10% of your HP back every time you kill someone. So you have to do three you have to kill people 3 times to get 1 stack of treasure hunter. Where here you're getting 2, and then when you're playing bot lane, normally you get 2 of these off. So you're gonna get 160 gold, which would be 8 kills or something off of this, just off those 2. And then after that, you got the jungler, which is going to give you like 110, or like the next one will give you 110, which is another 5 kills or something. So I think this is pretty decent because you're gaining 70 gold each time you collect a bounty hunter stack, increasing the gold gained by 20 for each bounty hunter stack up to 150. So I think this is actually better than the other one early, because just with those 2 kills alone, bot lane, I'm going to be getting 160 gold, which with futures market or anything like that would be a lot better early. Getting 20 item haste plus an additional 6 item haste per bounty hunter stack. Includes trinkets. So this is going to increase your sweepers as well. This is actually pretty powerful, especially if you could mix this with the inspiration tree. You'd be getting 30 item haste potentially. I kind of like that. I kind of like that a lot. Especially as a support. If you're going to be using like Locket or anything like that, that'd be really powerful. And it's going to help with your sweeper, so you could do that plus the other thing, which would be really good. So I think we should do like, let me mess with this real quick. I really like Demolisher and Second Wind on my support page, though, is the thing. And like Approach Velocity is really good, but if we do this, we're getting Summoner Spell Haste and Item Haste. Then you could go Locket for defense. I'm actually kind of split on this too, because if your ADC is doing really good, increasing the damage that they deal is really good. But then also increasing their defense is really good because they don't die, you know? So, because as a support, if they're behind and you build attack damage, at least they can get back into the game. But I don't, my supports, I haven't been building any like activated items necessarily. But this does affect trinkets. And trinkets are like fairly important early. Hmm. And we can still get redemption. And I don't know, redemption isn't really that good, but it's okay. It's kind of hurting my brain a little bit. That's because Demolisher and Second Wind, or even like Fawn of Life, like this heals for quite a bit in lane. Like I like this. Let me think for a second. Basic attacks are spell that deal damage to enemy champion. Grant 2 stacks of Conquer for 5 seconds. Gain 2 adaptive per stack. Gaining up 12 times. Range champion gain 1 per stack. When fully stacked, heal for 8% of the damage you deal to champions. Excess healing becomes a shield. If there's not a way to like guarantee your healing here, and like with Mordekaiser, I get they're doing Ravenous Hunter and stuff, but this right here, you're gaining 4% or 4% of missing health plus 3 over 10 seconds, and then you're gaining a 5% for heal and shield power here, and then when you're below 40%, it goes 10% stronger, which I think is probably really good. And I'm getting the stuff here, or at least 10% more HP when I kill somebody here, which I think is probably really strong. But the other one, I wish I had another ruin page here. This right here is just a normal caster page, I believe. How much is a ruin page? I don't even remember how to buy ruin pages. It's been so long. Accessories. Ruin page. 6,300 for a ruin page. Let's see what we get, boys. Rumble in the Jungle skin. See if we can get enough for a rune page, to be honest. I don't care about any of these champion shards for the most part. Rumble in the Jungle, High Noon Ash, Scuba Gragas. These two are kind of crap. High Noon Ash, I think, is probably decent. I don't even know what this means. Eternals. Anyway, I'm gonna get this run page real quick. Okay. At least you don't have to buy runes anymore. Although it kind of sucks because when I first played this game, you had to buy your runes to use in lanes and stuff, and it took a while. And that was like that was the big factor between like bronze and silver, and, like gold and plat. Back then was having your runes unlocked and buying wards early. These days, they give you wards for free, so. Mm. Runes. See, I'm thinking, so like if you did inspiration and you did like glacial or first strike. So let's say like that Azir page that I did before. You go first strike, stopwatch, futures market. You go cosmic insight instead of this, and then we went attack speed in Triumph before, which with Azir I think this would still be the best option. Um, but instead you could go like, or you could go treasure hunter, and you could go cheap shot for extra damage early, sudden impact for extra penetration if you wanted to. It's only 7 penetration for 5 seconds. And then you get eyeball collection, but zombie ward is probably pretty good. Actually, I do this. Yeah. So, actually, what I treasure hunter would give you more gold early. So like this would speed you up. So you'd get 160 plus whatever you got here early. Let's add this up real quick. So you're getting 70 plus 90 plus 100. Well, let me get a calculator. So there's 5 people that you can kill on the enemy team. It starts with 70 gold, and it goes up by 20 each time. And then you get 90 plus 110 plus 130 plus 150. All right, so it's 550 gold. You divide that by 20, and that's 27 kills that you'd have to get this much gold, which I like. But you're also getting health back with precision. But since Azir doesn't really get a lot of health, or casters in general don't get a lot of health, I think this is better. But I wouldn't have as much attack speed here. I would be losing out on a lot of attack speed for Azir, and I think it might be too much from his scaling to actually like be worth it, to be honest. But we'd still have like Taste of Blood, or cheap shot. Like this right here alone, another 10 to 45 damage early would be pretty nice. But zombie ward is a pretty good trait to have. So I think this has potential here. Getting 27 kills or assists is kind of it's not exactly common, I would say, in the game. You might get like 20 like late into the game, but this seems like it would snowball a bit harder. Hmm. I don't know. If I did this, I think you'd have to like use Leandries and play him as a caster mage, sort of like Lux or something. Um, because not having the attack damage, I think, would be a bit weird. But see, if you go in Genius Hunter with Cosmic Insight, then you could use Zonias a lot more, which is what's crossing my mind right now. But when it comes to this Mordekaiser page, if we go tank, I think Conqueror is probably still the best. Press the attack could give us a lot more damage to the target. I also like this because it's 12% from all sources. So like Glacial, and this also doesn't seem to have like a cooldown. Whereas like Glacial's good because it slows people down and it decreases their damage by like 10% or 15%. But it's in a very small area. Whereas like press the attack is going to give a huge damage buff, and then you get the other support item, and you're getting 22% damage increase for your ADC early, which is why I like this with Leona. You know, so that's kind of busted. But that item doesn't have an activated ability though. So like Locket, I just don't think cuts it as well as it used to, unless you have like a lot of burst on the enemy team. See, but so we can go with this with Mordekaiser, or we could go over here and keep the Glacial, and then you'd probably need Magic Footwear. You could do that or Hex Flash, I guess. And then you have Futures Market or Biscuits, and then you'd have, I think Approach Velocity is probably the best. You're getting 7.5% movement speed towards nearby enemy champions that are movement impaired. This bonus is increased to 15% movement speed that you impair. So I mean, I think this approach velocity seems like it'd be very strong. In glacial, I guess it's only early, so let's do conquer, triumph, because I don't know if we're gonna be able to get any X. This is built up from extra healing, so I mean, I don't know if we can spam our W and get this extra shield here or not. But it doesn't seem like you're going to be able, because I never see anyone use overheal. Really. I use it on Yasuo when I use
One of the stories we previously skipped because Belveth was on her way was a story from Noxus. At first we thought that it would be a random setup for a big story that would happen way in the future. However, a few weeks later, the World Walker expansion started with its reveals. And there we could see a lot of references to this story. So strap up, because not only are we heading into one of the most brutal lands in Runeterra, but we are also going to learn about one of the most brutal beings of Runeterra. And also Mordekaiser. So let's dive into the story, The Ice and the Embers. The story begins with a woman running through the woods. Her lungs burned, her feet were bloody, and each thorny bush gave her more scratches. There was a voice inside her head that kept telling her to run. About a day ago, she started her escape from the Ravenbloom Conservatory. At first, she heard the faculty staff screaming for her. Then, the dogs started barking along the River Gren. Night came, and with it, the distant sound of riders, thundering through the dark. That's where she had lost her satchel, which held some supplies stolen from the kitchens. There were 2 apples, a torn heel of a bread, and half block of cheese. It was enough to get her to safety, but barely. Now, hunger gnawed at her, as she tried to survive by picking berries, chewing on twigs and drinking rainwater from leaves. There was little peace, and every time she paused due to exhaustion, the voice returned. Run. She fell, tripped by a root, landing heavy enough for something in her to crack. She screamed through gritted teeth. The pain was coming from her leg. For a time, she just lay there, her face in the mud. Night rain fell on her broken body, washing away her tears and the blood. Run, the voice said, angrier now. Finally, she responded. I can't, she cried, her voice ragged as the rest of her. I can't. The voice quieted. Time passed. Exhaustion and pain braided together and sent her to sleep. In her dreams, she saw flashes of what came before. Headmistress Telsi standing in her dormitory room, the Arbiter of Thorns beside her. You have been chosen, Telsi said. The war in Ionia requires new weapons. Old weapons. The Arbiter's rough hands on her temples. Flashes of fire in her vision. The fever, the heat, the voice. Wake. When she woke up, the rain stopped. And surprisingly, things were peaceful. For now. Slowly she lifted herself, only for her knee to crack again. She did her best to hold back the scream. She gazed up past the branches, seeing stars through the clouds. She remembered the happier times. Laying in Fensworth Fields, with her grandmother as they named the constellations above. The Fox, the Lyre, the Hope. Above her now, shining bright, was the Witch, her favorite. Emotion welled inside her. She let out a single sob, which steamed against the winter chill. She hadn't noticed, but the chill had numbed her fingers and feet. She was freezing. She sat up fast and hugged herself, breathing faster, panic settling in. The shivering started. The voice spoke again. A new word. Fire. She limped towards the trees looking for dry branches and leaves, but the rain made everything wet. Soon the shivering had stopped. The pain faded, and she was ready to give in to the cold. When, in a small clearing in front of her, she noticed a felled tree. It had a deep notch carved into its surface. Her heart soared when she realized it was a way tree. They were used by the Empire Scouts to house preserved food and camping supplies. Reaching inside its hollow, she was hoping to pull out something. Anything. What she found was a kindling. A bundle of sticks tied together, with a flint and amber leaves. Then she found some dried beef and a handful of mushrooms. Soon enough, the fire was built. She sat by, hugging her knees and absently chewing on the beef. It was only barely edible, but she didn't care. She thought back to what had happened. Headmistress Telsi must have been furious. The old haggard lady would have locked the conservatory down by now and sent scouts out to search for her. She thought about Finn, one of the conservatory's first scouts, a gentle man with kind eyes who looked for gifted people like her and offered them home. He had arrived at her grandmother's cottage just a few weeks after her passing, when the entire village exiled her. While most of the Empire sees the value of mages, The more remote settlements like Fansworth still clung to the old mistrusts. There they called her a witch. She remembered all the hateful eyes. She remembered begging for help. She remembered the loneliness. And then, one summer's day, Finn Retrig had arrived and offered her hope. She kicked the fire with her good leg, gazing into the flickering light once more. Surely Finn couldn't have known what Telsi would do. He was so kind, he was... She paused, noticing something before her. The fire was taking shape, making an outline for a moment before collapsing away to nothing. Again and again it was trying to form the same shape. She glanced up, higher in the fire, and noticed two dark holes. They remained black despite the bright flames around them. She looked closer and realized they were not holes. They were eyes.
Emmeline.
She froze at the mention of her own name. While she was surprised, she knew what this was. Headmistress Telsi called it the gift. It was something that would make her stronger. It would make her more than just a mage.
Witness.
The fire began shifting. It showed her events that she had never seen before. There was a tall, magnificent stone cathedral. At its entrance, there was an armored titan, scattering his enemies with a cruel mace. By his side were two fearsome beasts, one made of shadow, the other of fire.
Witness.
Emmeline felt herself being drawn to the second beast. It was huge, with many burning arms. It screamed as it withered its enemies with unholy fire. The flame flared before Emmeline, and then a pale woman smiled. At her feet lay the metal titan, destroyed. The two beasts that served him were beaten and forced back. Robed figures surrounded them, chanting in an unknown language. And slowly, the power of the two beasts was reduced to a droplet. Emmeline felt something unexpected. A pity. The flames flared again. She saw the Arbiter of Thorns, riding silently in a carriage. Ahead stood the great Ravenbloom Conservatory. The droplet of fire fell from its cage onto a bare forehead. The screaming, the shackles, the fire.
Fire.
Emmeline snapped out of her vision when a man shouted at her. The two black eyes were inches from her face. She didn't realize she was standing in the fire pit, flames lapping at her ankles. Just as the pain began to set in, and she opened her mouth to scream, the man tackled her from the side. They slammed into the mud which put out the fire. The man was confused, and he wanted to know, what was she doing? With smoke still burning in her throat, Emmeline let out that she can't go back. He didn't know what they did to her. The man was confused. He had no idea what she was talking about. Headmistress Telsi, Emmeline replied. But once again, the man had no idea. She looked at the man, only to notice his worried eyes. So she asked him, who was he? And he introduced himself as Gregory, a simple traveler bound for the frontier. Emmeline introduced herself next, as she pointed out that her knee was hurt. But surprisingly, her feet were fine, save for the blisters and bruises. She looked for the dark eyes in the fire, but saw nothing. Gregory eyed Emmeline suspiciously before telling her that his cart was nearby. He could take her to the nearest town. Emmeline immediately refused. She couldn't be seen by anyone. But Gregory refused to leave her there like this, so at least he offered her some food. And through her growling stomach, Emmeline couldn't refuse that. After the two finished their meal, along with a pie, cow's milk and a handful of chestnuts, Gregory drew a map in the mud and told her about all the places he had already visited, which he followed by a story about drunken basilisk crug whispers, which made Emmeline smile. When he was done with the stories, he asked Emmeline if she could tell him what happened to her. She told him to first show her where they were going. Gregory pointed at the mountains. They would go as far as the north would take them. A place full of nothing but plains and valleys. He was hoping to make a home there. Emmeline bowed her head. She thought about going to both Droon and even somewhere distant in Tokagol, but now these seemed so close and obvious. She couldn't trust her old neighbors in Fansworth, and heading south to the capital was out of question. She thought back to a phrase often whispered at the conservatory. The rose is everywhere. The rose is everyone. She would have to go somewhere unexplored. So, she asked Gregory if she could go with him. She could hunt and cook, and she could leave as soon as they were near the borders. Gregory told her he would take her as far as she pleased, but under one condition. She would tell him some of her own stories. It didn't matter how nice they were. He would listen. And so, soon Gregory mounted his horse and resumed his journey north. Emmeline was hiding in the cart behind. With its rocking, the blanket's warmth, and her exhaustion, the darkness took her, and in her sleep, she dreamed of the quiet, peaceful land far away.
If there's a problem, I'll find the solution. Whether I'm in a sticky situation or a staring contest, I'll always win. It's up to me to save the day. Because in my universe, I'm exactly who I want to be. Build the universe in you with Lego Marvel Black Panther sets. Each set sold separately.
And that was the newest story from Noxus. In case you have not realized yet, Gregory and Emmeline are Annie's parents. This was essentially a prequel to Annie's bio. Now, in case you don't remember, here is the super TLDR version of her story. Soon after Annie was born, she and Gregory fell ill. The sickness made Annie's body so hot she couldn't be held by Emmeline. So, one day, Emmeline decided to fetch some icy water. The next morning, when Gregory woke up into his fever, he found Annie completely healthy, but Emmeline was gone. While we don't really know what happened to Emmeline, we know that Annie had similar fire visions to Emmeline. The theory goes that after the Arbiter of Thorns put the fire demon into Emmeline, since she had a kid, the demon couldn't be split in two separate bodies, and so Emmeline likely sacrificed herself to save Annie. Anyway, after years of parenting Annie alone, Gregory eventually met Liana, who had her own daughter. This is where the cinematic happened. We all know the outcome of that. Annie became an orphan. Since then, Annie kept roaming around the borderlands, letting her adorable exterior to get her some free clothes and meal from the locals. However, should something bad ever happen to her, Tibbers, a plushy toy made by Emmeline, would be ready to protect her. And this is where all the cool info starts to click in. You see, in the story we learned that Mordekaiser fought with two beasts at his side. The Beast of Shadow being Atakan, the bringer of ruin, and the Beast of Fire being Tybulk. So now we know that not only was Tybulk put into Emmeline, but since Emmeline then passed it to Annie, we know that Tibbers is Tybulk. And this is where we dive into Legends of Runeterra, where we get even more lore. Now, I'm gonna skip over some of the details that lead into the finale of this. It's not really something that would be spoil-worthy, but I'm gonna skip over it because if you actually played the PvE side of Legends of Runeterra, any story there actually explains how everything gets to burn. Again, it's nothing massive, don't worry if you skip over it, but go and play it because it's actually really cool. Anyway, it all starts with Annie's cards. Over a decade ago, Emmeline Kyosar fled the Ravenbloom Conservatory with an invaluable and incandescent asset in her control. Ravenbloom scouts searched for her in every corner of the Empire, but none of the rumors they heard led them to Emmeline. And so, years later, when news arrived of a lost girl burning with rage in the northern Ironspike Mountains, Finn Rhetoric reluctantly gathered his things and left to investigate. He expected to find nothing. How wrong he was. So yes, this is where all the cool info starts to pour in. In the back we can see the Ravenbloom Conservatory. This is the place Emmeline fled. In the back, that is the headmistress, and the person in the front is Finn. That's the guy Emmeline thought was a good guy. It seems like he's really not. As a cool detail, notice that Finn is holding a staff with a fragment of a black blade. I don't think this is specifically Riven's blade, there are more lesser blades like this one in Noxus, but it's cool to see all the tie-ins to the Black Rose. And then it continues in her level up. I have found her, she's Emmeline's no doubt. Same eyes, same giggle. I'll bring her back within the fortnight. Having spoken to the girl, I ask that you be kind to her. I believe there is good in there, along with the dark. In the background we can see, spoiler, she burns down the conservatory, and once again we can see Finn and the headmistress. Also notice the contrast on her clothing. It's very different from her first day. Fun fact, this is most likely the third day. Then we got more background information. Headmistress Telsi spoke at length about the Noxian tenants, leaving the children before her increasingly bored and restless. But while most students largely contained their outbursts, Annie acted. First with smoke, then with fire. And then we get to the core of Annie's powers. The demon Tybulk had infested the minds of countless victims over the centuries. Slowly, inexorably, he would lead them to the fire and watch his flames feast on scorched flesh. But in young Annie, Tybulk found a will completely indomitable, a talent for magic that rivaled even his own. Yes, here it is confirmed that Tybulk is in fact inside Annie. Specifically, maybe he's partly. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Emmeline's half was inside Tibers, while the other half was inside Annie. But that's just theory crafting. Anyway, here you can see that just like they do in the Noxian talent schools, they let powerful kids fight each other to really see their strength. And then there is a card specifically for the Raven
to Summoner's Rift.
By now, word no doubt reached you of the Rose Guard Academy's dismal failure. I expect you will learn from your sister school's failings.
30 seconds
I
until
expect you will
minions
manage your
spawn.
facility in a manner that benefits the Empire. What's interesting here is that we only know about one other school for talented kids in Noxus that failed, and that would be Rel's school. So I wonder if that's what the Rose Guard Academy is. And then, simply because Tibers didn't like the school, the two burned down the conservatory by unleashing Tybulk. And the quote
Minions
here
have
comes from
spawned.
someone who experienced
That
Tybulk
gets you
trying to
lush.
dominate their mind. It burns in me, this dark presence. It whispers to me, fire, fire! In the flames I see its eyes, black and unblinking, staring, smiling, urging me to join the rest. Silhouettes in the inferno, reaching out. Come home, come home. That's really what happened to Emmeline in the story. He was also really close until he would step into the flames. And he did, but it was Gregory. Now that's really it for any Star student. We can theoretically talk about the other students. There is Fidel Kithera from House Kithera, which is Elise's house. There is also Dani, who was one day found near the Noxian. Now, despite the fact that Nico is supposed to be the last of the Uzis, it is not impossible for more of them to be alive, because when the Cataclysm arrived and the Uzikat island was destroyed, whoever could survive traveled to the west, with both Ikao and Noxus being along the way. So it is possible for Nico to be in the south and Danny to be in the north. It is not that far. And lastly, there is the oldest of the kids who is loyal to the Rose. It seems like they have the power to split the zone. Once again, as you can see in the background, the Rose lets these kids fight no matter the outcome. After all, that is what Rel's story is about. And that is it for the new lore surrounding Annie. I have to say, even though Annie was cool in the past, this new story with Tybulk really fleshed her out. I really like what is happening. And about all of that, I am so glad it is linked to Mordecai. There is some great potential for the future in this. Now I also wonder where is Atakan? The shadowy beast seems to be missing. Though I wouldn't be surprised if somehow Atakan made it to the Black Stronghold. He still has no idea what somehow, maybe that's right. But it's also possible that Atakan remains in Noxus. Regardless, there is one thing that should make everyone happy. Since the story is related to two schools for Noxians, both of which were destroyed by the kids, I wouldn't be surprised if Annie was going to meet a really underappreciated character.
An enemy has been slain.
Grateful, call me tyrant. The wise.
An enemy has been slain. 3.